Say hello, neighbor, at your tables, and then we will get started. All right, thank you. So tonight we are going to share the progress that we've been making around safety issues, around pollution, and just a tag that we have a table over here and people who have learned how to register people to vote. So if you haven't and you want to, we have that available over there. So Mark, if you want to come and get us started.
Thank you. I always tell people it's dangerous to give me a microphone because karaoke may happen at any moment. But I want to introduce Captain Rob Brown. He's the South Precinct Commander. And rather than taking a whole lot of time to do the intro, I'm going to shut up and let him talk. Captain Brown.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Brown. I'm the South Precinct Commander. I've been so since July of this last year. Here to kind of give you a safety update for the South Precinct. For those of you who aren't familiar, the South Precinct is everything from I-90 down to the southern city limit, everything from Lake Washington all the way to the Duwamish. If you go on the other side of the Duwamish, then you're into the Southwest Precinct. So I want to start with the numbers, but I'm not going to throw a lot of numbers out there, but I'm going to give you a little bit of my concern when I look at the numbers. The first number, and this should be cause for celebration. At this point, year to date last year, we'd had 5 homicides within those boundaries I told you of the South Precinct. This year we're at 0 so far, knock on wood. When you see that, that gives you like hope. Okay, we're heading in the right direction. You look closer at the numbers and it's a little more worrisome than that. So what I mean by that, if you look at shots fired, it breaks it down into 3 areas. It has shots fired where no victim has been identified, located, just a report of shots fired, casings recovered, that sort of thing. Then you also have shots fired where somebody's been struck by a bullet. And then you have fatal shootings. So like I said, so far this year, 0 fatal shootings. Last year we were at 5, but this year we've had 10 people struck by a bullet so far year to date, meaning as of, the 2nd of April this year compared to the 2nd of April last year. Within last year, it was seven people that had been struck, 5 which were deceased. So we are already have more people being hit by bullets this year. Here's the alarming one is that, and to put this in the right context, 2020 had a record escalation in almost all areas of crime, including violent crime, most alarmingly. 2021, 2022, much of the same. 2023, as you all know, unfortunately, and I'm not going to be all doom and gloom. I'm not going to keep, but I want to be realistic and set realistic expectations. 2023 was record setting, both for the South Precinct and for the city in homicides, in number of shots fired. It was not a good year. This year we are exceeding as far as shots fired by quite a substantial amount over last year to date. So we have 61 incidents within the South Precinct. Last year was 43. So if you look at it, and I know you really can't see this that well, but these 2 little bars down here, that's 2023 and 2022. This is 2024 year to date. You can see that we're already vastly outpacing this time last year. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm enjoying this moment where I can say we're at 0 homicides. That ain't going to hold. So we will do the best we can, as I have said many times over. You probably heard me say many times over. Effectively reducing gun violence is the top priority for the South Precinct. We have to make that our top priority at the moment because we do have staffing limitations and restrictions. We have a limited number of officers, much less than we have traditionally had pre-2020. And so really, it's with the escalating gun violence, we have to have those officers effectively addressing the crimes that somebody doesn't necessarily walk away from. That's, I can understand there's folks here, you're probably concerned about the guy that speeds up and down your block. You're concerned about other various, and That's reasonable and rational, and I get that, and we'll do what we can about those sorts of things, but gun violence continues to remain our top priority at the moment. So let me talk a little bit more about gun violence. Typically, what you'll see when it comes to gun violence is that it has a stickiness quality to it. And what I mean by that is that it's a few that commit many of these crimes, a very few that commit many of the gun violence crimes, the trigger pullers. There's a few guns that commit many of the gun crimes. We know this because we have something called NIBIN, which basically is this national database that anytime that police officers respond and collect up evidence, whether that be casings, whether that be a fired round, or whether that be a gun that they recover, a ballistic examination is done on it because each gun has its own individual fingerprint, so to speak, in its ballistics, right? And so that goes into a database, and and what they do is they analyze connections. And that's how we know that there are a few guns here in the South Precinct in Seattle that commit many of the gun crimes. Few guns are being used over and over again, most likely by the same individuals or closely affiliated individuals. So that's what I'm talking about when I say stickiness. You have a few individuals committing many of the crimes, a few guns committing many of the crimes, and a few locations tend to experience the most gun violence. We use this to our advantage when trying to effectively address gun violence. Those are the areas that experience the highest likelihood, the highest rate of gun violence. Those are the areas where we're going to deploy officers when they're not on calls. So, you know, when my officers are not responding to a 911 call at the moment, these are the areas they're going to be visible in, patrolling around, either, you know, in their car, even getting out on foot. Some of these areas, and I know this is Beacon Hill, but I will say that one of my, this meeting, I will say that one of the areas in the South Precinct that tends to be at the top of the charts for us is the area around the 9400 block of Rainier Avenue South, Rainier Beach, kind of between the, what is it, the, trying to think of the name of the mini mart there that's on the corner, between that and you have the Polaris, which is a housing complex there, and you have Safeway. So that's an area that you're typically going to see. That's where you're gonna, yeah, it's not a 7-Eleven, it's I can't think of it. Seward Park Mart. That's what it is. In fact, unfortunately, right now, kind of a tale of the time, if you look at the front of the Seward Park Mart, it's pocked with bullets because there was a shooting just a little over a week ago. You have, actually, it was a little more than that. It was a couple weeks ago. The front of it shot up many bullet holes in it, and as well as the building that's next to it. So, you know, this is our focus. This is where I say, like, these hot spots, these flashpoints, this is where officers are deploying to. But we're not going to take strictly a reactive response. We want to figure out who these, you know, trigger pullers are. Like I said, if you take somebody off the street that's going around shooting people, that's going to have a direct correlation to a reduction in gun violence. So I can talk a lot about what we've done. Can't talk a lot about what we're going to do because we don't want to tip our hand. But rest assured that we are working on effective strategies. When I say we, I don't just mean the South Precinct officers that I command, but also our investigations unit. They're working on ways to effectively identify and hold accountable the trigger pullers. So let me talk a little bit more. I do want to give a brief, I want to make sure I don't overrun my time. I'm going to give a brief update on the home invasion robbery. This is a positive update. And I'll keep it short, but it got a lot of attention last fall. So I want to make sure I at least give you that update. So there was a total of 5 adults, 1 juvenile. All are still incarcerated, most of them with anywhere around, I think the average is around $500,000 bail. They're looking at multiple charges. 2 of them are actually looking at hate crime charges. It can be, there was a lot of question at the time. How come, you know, you're not saying that they're wanted on hate crime before they were captured, right? There's more to it than just the correlation of the ethnicity of the victims. The prosecutor's office has to, you know, and the detectives, they have to show more compelling proof than just a correlation. And they were able to do that apparently in 2 of the cases. But like I said, this is good news. I think this is a success story because all those folks are still incarcerated, awaiting their time in court. And that series, that style, that modus operandi of home invasion robberies has ended. Now, because the community was so sensitive to it, I've been very closely watching. There were 2 incidents back in December that seem to be one-offs, aren't connected to this group, don't have like an identifiable MO. And then there was one in January that was completely a one-off because although it was a Cantonese household, an older Cantonese woman there, but the home invasion robbers actually spoke to her in Cantonese, which I guess I just bring that up because it doesn't fit with any other pattern. So we're not seeing an emerging pattern that's causing us alarm. If we did, I would make sure that I would bring that up to you. Also, very briefly, an update, because I know I've talked in the past about kind of the bump and robs, these street robberies. We have seen, and I think a lot of this can be seasonal as well, because this time of year, the winter season coming into spring here, this is the lowest time this has been the lowest time for crime. We're going to see it ramping back up, but that seems to apply also to the robberies. We have not seen like we were seeing in like August, September, even into October. We're not seeing the bump and robs like we had been seeing. We're not seeing that same level of robberies, although robberies themselves have not dropped. They're holding about steady. It's about the same this year as it was this time last year, very minor deviation from it. All right, so I wanted to provide those updates. I want to talk now, I'm going to circle back, talk a little bit more. I kind of went into the gun violence and our concerns there. And I'm going to label something. There's always in law enforcement, I may regret this, but in law enforcement, for whatever reason, in Seattle Police Department, we typically dance around things like addressing the causes of gun violence, particularly when it comes to gangs. But I will tell you that the shootings that we're experiencing in the South Precinct, the vast majority are motivated by gang violence. And I'll even throw out here, because I think that solving problems effectively, we all have to agree on what's actually causing the problem. If we can't even talk about what's causing the problem, it's hard to come up with an effective solution. So, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I will say that we have 2 groupings that are posturing online. We know this because they put it up, they like to post everything. It's new generations, right? They like to put everything online. They like to pose with their guns. They like to shout out their, online, their threats of what they're going to go do. And so we know right now that you have a group affiliation of the Hoovers and the grimy, I can't make these names up, grimy gangsta guerrillas, GGG. That's one side of this kind of beef that's going on right now. And then you have on the other side, it's kind of a coalition of what's known as 5-star, Sleaze, Damu. They're a blood set. And so these folks, they do have connections here in the South Precinct as well as other areas in the region, both stretching from Tacoma up through North Seattle. They have been posting a lot of their intentions to carry out, revenge shootings on each other. Quite often, one of the areas that comes up, and again, I talked already about my focus, the precinct's focus on that area between, the Safeway there, the Rainier Beach Safeway and whatnot. This is one of the areas where it seems like they will often try to shoot at each other. This has become even more hazardous because of the nature of the guns that they're using. So if you're not familiar, a Glock is a commonly used gun in gun violence because it's a very effective. I mean, I carry a Glock. The police department's issued Glocks. They're very effective. They're very reliable. Unfortunately, there's something out on the market called a Glock switch. And what the Glock switch does is it takes this semi-automatic. What I mean by semi-automatic, for those of you who don't know guns, means that every time a person is firing it, they have to pull the trigger. With the Glock switch, you just point, pull, and it acts as an automatic. It basically transitions it into an automatic weapon where you're going to go through all of the bullets in the gun. Unfortunately, also, and that's illegal. That's a modification that's unlawful, illegal. Another illegal thing that a number of these folks engaged in these gun crimes are using are the extended magazines. Some even have like a drum magazine. So that means when they pull that trigger, you may have 30 or more rounds going downrange. Now, a lot of bullets, very little accuracy. So they may be shooting at some rival, but unfortunately, with that kind of, and I'll just be very candid here, that spray of bullets, there is a higher likelihood and concern that somebody else could be caught in the backdrop, right, and injured and struck. So it is very dangerous out there. And the other thing, and again, I said I wouldn't be doom and gloom. I'm really going down kind of a doom and gloom route. You know, you may have heard, if you've heard Chief Diaz talk, he talks about how many guns we've recovered. And that is at record levels. And it's at record levels. The number of guns, I don't have the number. I wish I had it off the top of my head. I don't. But like last year, the year before, it was, I believe it is well more than I believe. And I don't want to be misquoted here. Any journalists in the room? Don't quote me on this. All right. But I believe it is about more than double, and rough on that, from what we had been recovering pre-2020. Now, how does this make sense to you? We have a department that's depleted of officers, that's in true staffing crisis. So we have far less officers on the street. Each precinct used to have an anti-crime team. We don't. That's, you know, basically any officer that can work is in patrol because that's where we need to have 911 response. Point being, less officers out there, less proactive ability, bandwidth to do proactive work, yet more guns are being recovered. Do the math. It doesn't mean that the officers are working twice as hard. I mean, they're working hard, but it doesn't mean that that less officers are being more effective. It means that more people are willing to carry guns on the streets. More people who are criminally involved are willing to carry guns. When I was an anti-crime team sergeant in West Precinct back from 2017 through 2019, we would do drug operations where we would do like an order up takedown. And I won't go into describing all that, but it was like a buy bust. And typically maybe 10%, if that, of the people that we had arrested that are actually out actively dealing drugs, right? Whether to the street or whether making deliveries to dealers on the street. Maybe 10% of the time they would have a gun on them or recovered in their vehicle, right? Usually they didn't. Now I know from, and I don't do that anymore. I'm now the, commander of a precinct, but for those who still have been engaging in that kind of operation, that counter narcotics operation, it is more often than not. And this is not, again, for the journalists, my little disclaimer, I don't have a measurement of this, but it is more often than not that the person has a gun on them. So it just means there's more guns out there and they're willing to carry them. And the problem is when they're engaged in a criminal enterprise, things go sideways. It can get a lot worse if they have a gun on them as opposed to not having a gun available to them. Anyway. All right. I think I've really made my point on that. I want to make sure that I kind of don't take all. I want to talk a little bit about the positive here. I think this is the last thing I'll talk about. I want to answer some questions. Last thing I want to talk about. Okay, I've talked about the problem, big problem. What are we doing about it? One of the things that I've been very fortunate to be involved in is that I was selected to attend a training. It's a 5-month training, 1 week each month in Chicago. Don't worry, you're not paying a dime of it. It's all been it's through the University of Chicago. It's called the Policing Leadership Academy. It's not paid for by the various cities that send officers. It's actually paid through a donation through the University of Chicago. It's excellent training, specifically focused on precinct commanders. Now, Chicago, no surprise, has a gun violence problem. And so that's the reason they came up with this, because they found that by pushing out education to the precinct command level, it has the most impact for change. And so I go in a couple of weeks to my next session. That'll be, let me see, I started in January, so that'll be session number 4. I have learned a lot of things that I intend to apply. And I'm going to give one example, because again, I don't want to talk too long here. I'm going to give one example. 3 minutes? Okay. 3 minutes. Yeah, right. Last example, okay? One of the things that we can apply is what's called social network analysis, okay? It sounds like you go online and look at all that social media. You don't. You look at police records, see who has been connected and involved with who in a criminal enterprise. You can kind of build up networks. The nice thing about that is we're not focused, I talked about earlier about gangs. We're not focused on folks that saying, oh, you're a gang member, you must be doing bad things. No, we look at who has been criminally involved with who and kind of builds out this spider web of networks. That's one of the things that we're implementing to try to address the type of criminality that leads to gun violence. More to follow on whichever meeting you invite me back to next time. I'd like to answer any questions if I have any time for that.
Excellent. Okay, stay put.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes, so this is our first time to do this. So questions from the floor, raise your hand, and then we'll go to questions on the Zoom. Anybody have questions for Captain Brown? Yes, go ahead. Short questions.
Yeah, I took all the time. I apologize. I did that on purpose, so I didn't have to answer many questions.
I don't know. We are getting a lot of reports. Definitely, you guys are not getting the reports. So in some relationship, our communities, the police department is not that much good enough. Is there something that can, especially with the community of color, rather than it used to be?
Yes, and that is an excellent question. Yeah, if I understand it, you're talking about the relationship between the police and in your case, you're addressing with the communities of color, that's been strained, right? That trust has been strained there, right? Absolutely. Now, I'm going to try to keep my answer short again. I didn't address that when I was talking to you about gun violence. One of the things that's very important to me is that we, as your South Precinct Police Department, aren't unilaterally going out there and saying, aha, Captain Brown has this great idea from this training he went to in Chicago, and we're going to do that, and it's going to fix all the problems. And we're not asking the community what they want, because, that's where we go afoul, is when we just think, okay, we're going to fix it, and we're not going to talk to anybody. Now, I'll keep this brief again, but one of the areas I'm focusing on, I talked about these areas where gun violence tends to correlate strongly to. I'm working on a capstone project with this University of Chicago. We're working on the Polaris. They know that. I've been talking with them. We've had a number of meetings. The most important thing is what we're starting out with, which is communication, identifying all of the stakeholders, all of the significant community players, influential people there around it that have an impact and want to have a say in how, we address this problem, and bringing them all together. We've already had 3 meetings. We're going to have more. I'd like to, if it's effective there, then have this implement the same type of approach to other locations that are experiencing high levels of gun violence. But absolutely, the starting point are these communications and building these relationships. Because we all know in police work, not everything always goes perfectly. We want to have those relationships up front before we meet our challenges. We want to know each other and be able to smile and shake hands, know each other by name before we're meeting at some tragedy. So.
Any questions from Zoom? No.
With regards to the staffing shortage, with SPD, a couple of things come to mind. Is that there going to be movement towards hiring more officers of color to create a partnership with the community that serves them, so that we have more partnership by having people of color in the police force to represent the communities that they serve? And then my second part of that is kind of related. Are we without a gang union? That's a thing of the past.
I'll answer both of those questions. The first, yes, that has and continues to be a priority for the Seattle Police Department. We are actively looking at how to encourage folks from various communities to join the police department. We're also part of the 30 by 30. You probably heard where we're trying to include more recruit more female officers to the department. The 30 by 30 means 30% by the year 2030. And so, that is something that I would say that from my perspective, that our recruiting unit has been very proactive about, and continues to be. So part of our approach to that is to show up at a lot of ethnic community events, so that, we're no stranger, that we meet each other face to face. Even kids, see us there in uniform, and they get comfortable and they think maybe I could do that someday. And for those of you who don't know, we are hiring. So if anybody is interested in applying, we will do this. Yeah, that's right. All right. The second part of your question, real quick, second part of your question. So, you probably know in government, there's it's not an uncommon thing to rename something, reinvent it. There is still a gang unit, but it's no longer called the gang unit. It's called the Gun Violence Reduction Unit, GVRU. Same folks, different label.
I do have a question from Zoom. For those of us who have to go to the Safeway or Polaris departments, that is a place of gun violence, what can we do to keep ourselves safe?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I want to emphasize is calling it in when it happens, because a lot of times we'll have crimes of violence even go unreported. And like I said, a big part of us solving it is collecting up the evidence that can be connected up to, make a case. I'd almost want to put Mark Solomon up here, but I'll try to put it in his words, looking people in the face. And that means with that, I don't mean with like a mean glare, but like looking them in the face and with a smile and waving. Once somebody, folks, crime prefers anonymity. They prefer not to be noticed, observed, right? If somebody knows that you know what they look like, they're less likely, eye contact that's the reason I like these in-person meetings again. I can read a room again, right? Eye contact's important. We're social creatures. And I think that that's a good way to deter a lot of violence. Yes. Yes. Break-ins have one thing I don't want to characterize or mischaracterize. Oh, yeah, sorry. So there's concern about break-ins businesses around South Hanford Street. And so, yes, I don't want to make it sound like we are solely and exclusively focusing on gun violence. I know my third watch, which is the hours that start from like 7 p.m., they go to 5 a.m. A lot of their stuff is gun violence, but our first watch units usually come on in the early morning hours, like around 4 a.m., as well as some of the tail end third watch. They deal a lot with those type of incidents, those break-ins. That is a priority for us. There's been a number of them even just recently. I'm thinking about the Hanford ones. I'm also thinking about, and forgive me, I'm thinking precinct wide. I'm thinking about down in Soto and some of the cannabis locations where they've been using businesses where they've been using stolen vehicles to ram into it and steal product. But yes, those are very concerning for us. We do send a lot of officers to those type of calls because it is not uncommon. Again, my theme is guns. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon that now a lot of the folks committing break-ins are armed. We've been finding that quite often. So yeah, so you'll see a fairly heavy response from what available officers we have to an active break-in like that. Yes, please.
So, in addition to being a board member of the Beacon Hill Council, I'm also the crime prevention coordinator for the South Precinct. And a lot of what I do is those burglary and robbery follow-ups with businesses. So, for example, El Quetzal, they've had their stuff broken into. I've talked to Luis about that. And I do those follow-ups with those businesses. Many businesses in Georgetown or South Park, South Park, and Soto will reach out to me and say, hey, can you come by and do a security assessment for us? So I come over to the business, I see what they already have in place, and I make recommendations for improvement to prevent those kind of incidents from happening again. The other thing that is available for businesses through the city, through the Office of Economic Development, is a storefront repair fund. So that businesses, small businesses, the mom and pops, like Seward Park Mart, that have experienced property damage from break-ins, gun violence, graffiti, whatever repairs they make, they can get reimbursed by the city for those repairs. So that is something that we also push out to the community to let them know that, hey, this resource is available for you. So you don't have to bear the entire brunt of that repair yourself. There is help from the city to do that.
So what, who are the contact for that? You're looking for that again, as the Office of Economic Development. Or in this only.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
I just want you to know that the commitment of SPD to come and meet with us every 2 or 3 months has been really important for us because it has been a scary time. And also, can you introduce one of your commissioners who's here tonight? Who was taking the photo?
I don't know. No, I'm sorry. I'm taking, I'm not sure.
Well, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah. So if you can introduce yourself to us.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the end. But you know, we want to improve community policing relations with anyone who want to part. I'm here to talk to the meeting. Yeah, and you know, I'm being being one who we want to say. We may be on our social media.
Okay, so we need you to repeat that to the microphone, so this.
yeah, I'll step out.
And then we'll give a hand to
Oh.
Captain Brown.
Nice. We had him back actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chloe from the Seattle Community Police Commission. We focus on improving community and policing relations in the city of Seattle. Like I said, I'm here to listen to what community members have to say, do data collection, really see how, you know, we can work on some of the fractures that have happened in the social and political, cultural landscape in Seattle in these past couple years. We're always doing new things and you know, also keeping up with the latest happenings in the area. So feel free to approach me after this if you have any questions. So, thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's give him a round of applause, please. You're welcome. So I'm going to move us to the overall theme for tonight. As you know, April is also Earth Day, but our overall theme is that we as a community can identify problems, but the solutions we need to partner because government has resources, we have the knowledge of what's happening in the community and so forth. So in Beacon Hill, as you well know, many of us have been working on air and noise pollution that comes from the roads, from the aircraft, and from indoor oil and gas heating. So what we're going to do is we're going to have what we call partner solutions. So the first part really is about there's a lot of greenhouse gas and carbon pollution that's emitted from oil and gas heating. So our partner at the city from the Office of Sustainable Environment, Christine Bunch, is not able to come, but she sent us a video. And then our local partner is El Centro de la Raza, and Ivan Montes is going to share that. So Ivan, if you can just go ahead and sit up there, we'll run the video, which is about 4 minutes. And then, this is a direct service to folks. And part of what we're anticipating is there's a lot of funding coming down to reduce greenhouse gases, be it from what they call clean energy conversion, as well as energy assistance, which is like weatherization and so forth. So I'm just going to step away. And I want you to know the bench over here. I mean, that's our
hotshot team. Kalia Carter is our project manager to make this Zoom, and then Bill McKee, who's my hubby, doing sound, and then Chris is doing video, and then monitoring the Zoom questions because they're putting it on chat is Jerry, who's one of our board members. So it takes a village to just get a hybrid meeting going, okay?
Go ahead.
I'm Christine Bunch. I'm an energy advisor and % reduction in the residential sector. We've been making steady progress since 2017 when we first launched the Clean Heat program. At that time, we estimated there were about 18,000 homes heating with oil. Every year, we look at heat pump permit data, census data, and oil tank decommissioning permit data to track our progress. We know that there are about 1,300 households that decommission their tank every year. And that means that they either remove their tank or they fill it, which is a requirement of the Seattle Fire Department. So now we're tracking at around 9,000 to 10,000 homes. At this rate, we anticipate that Seattle will no longer be heating with oil by 2030, which is a huge milestone. There are many benefits of switching from heating oil to an electric heat pump. Given the high price of oil right now at over $4 a gallon, typical heating bill savings would be about $1,000 per year. A heat pump can also improve indoor air quality because you're not combusting fossil fuels in your home. Personally, when I switched from an oil furnace to a heat pump, I saw a huge difference for my family. My youngest son used to sneeze a lot every morning when the oil furnace would come on. And after we moved to a heat pump, he stopped sneezing, which was pretty amazing. And also, as we felt our summers getting hotter and longer, we appreciated that the heat pump provided air conditioning. Even though we didn't use it all the time in the summer, it was nice to use it for those really hot days over 90 degrees. So the city's program has two tracks. One is an instant rebate for moderate income folks, and that program is managed by OSC. The other option is a no-cost conversion for income qualified households, and that program is implemented by the Office of Housing as part of their weatherization program offerings. The rebate program is ongoing and is funded by the city and program partners Gensco and Mitsubishi. Homeowners choose a contractor from our list of participating installers and then receive an instant rebate directly on their invoice. OSC and our partners actively promote the program through direct mail and online advertising campaigns. We've also just partnered with the Switches On, a nonprofit organization that promotes residential electrification. Their website can give you a list of all the rebates and tax incentives available in Western Washington, as well as more information on heat pumps, water heaters, and induction cooking. The Office of Housing implements the Clean Heat program for households with lower incomes, which is 80% of area median income or lower. The program manages the entire conversion process, including visiting the home for an energy assessment, managing the installer, and decommissioning the oil tank. They will also assess whether the home needs insulation and other weatherization services, and can perform those upgrades as well. For households that convert to electric heat pumps, and who also participate in the utility discount program, they can expect an additional 60% discount on their new heating costs, new electric heating costs. which will save them even more money per year. The city has helped more than 1,800 households convert from oil through a rebate program or at no cost, and the Beacon Hill community continues to be a priority. Out of the 1,800 households, approximately 210 homes have received a rebate, and 65 low-income homes have received a no-cost conversion through the Office of Housing. Some things we're working on in 2024 include hiring a clean heat coordinator in OSC to assist with program implementation and expansion. That position is expected to start in June of this year. We're also expecting some funding from the Department of Commerce to come through by mid-year, so that position will be very helpful to ensure that the funding is deployed in communities that need it most. Also, the Office of Housing recently hired a community engagement specialist and is also revamping and simplifying the program application to reduce barriers and increase participation. Thanks very much for inviting me to provide an overview of the Clean Heat program. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is christine.bunch@seattle.gov. Also, I've listed the 2 websites that you can find out more information about our rebates, and for the Office of Housing, no cost support. So that's nomooreoilheat.com for the rebates, and seattle.gov/clean heat for the Office of Housing program. Thanks again. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
So I'm Ivan Montes con el Centro de la Raza. I'm the partner there with City of Seattle. I quite, I've been working with Christine Bunch to work with the community, so I'll be presenting the community side as far as what we've been doing, our outreach, and some of our successes. And I will have my slides up there here in momentarily. I am pretty familiar with the programs that Christine had mentioned, so if you guys have any questions on that, and I have the capacity to answer those, I will. To anything I don't, I will pass it off to her. I would say just reach out to her. Yep, go ahead. Next slide. So yeah, I want to talk about community. This is a picture of us doing our first community focus group in the community. And it was just such a great time to see the community come together and talk. And something I realized was that there's just so much passion behind our community members wanting to engage and talk about some of the issues that they have been experiencing. And I mean, they gave us great feedback, which we're using to develop our strategies coming here in 2024. So this is just a picture I wanted to share with you guys, just showing that the energy there was just some of the most amazing. It was just amazing and seeing everybody really connect. Next slide. So I started in El Centro in August of 2023. So I've been there just under a year. El Centro's position essentially has been to do outreach and education for the Seattle City programs. That's the Clean Heat, HomeWise, and to spread awareness on some of the other programs that they have, such as the One Toilet program, utility discount program, et cetera there. And with that, we're talking with the community members and everything, we've been able to provide feedback to City of Seattle and to some of our partners to help, reach people and make and solve some of the barriers to those programs, whether that's communication or possibly, how something is translated. Since August, I've done 25 formal outreach, 3 focus groups, and countless in-person, person-to-person sessions. That's just, just talking one-on-one person to really see how the community is feeling about some of the living situations or some of the issues that they may be facing within our community. El Centro de la Raza has had a lot of large events where we've had a great time to promote some of these programs. We've reached somewhere in the ballpark of 1,300, 1,500 people in total. And that's not directly, but that's just been the people who have seen eyes on within our program. If anyone was here for Dia de los Muertos, maybe you guys saw me up there. I was running around talking to everybody, handing out flyers. So and I'll still continue to do that. If you guys go around Beacon Hill, you might see me running around and tracking you down. Next slide. So just by the numbers, it's been 300. We've been able to reach 366 community members. That have been in direct contact. That's face to face. That's education. That's them being either interested in some programs, and we either defer them to whatever program it is that they need, or sometimes they're just they don't qualify, unfortunately. So of the 366, 291 were educated in the programs that the city provides. Yeah, one of the things that I realized I wanted to put that up there was just to kind of El Centro we're a hub, we have so many programs and we have partners. Not everybody who comes to El Centro needs environmental or weatherization, but they do sometimes need help with food. And we've been able to help in this outreach. We've also been able just to help people live, and I think it's such a huge part of what we do. It is a community center. We're there to help people, and getting people their basic needs met is just part of what we do as well. And with the help of City of Seattle, I've been working with the program managers as things come up, and we've been able to overcome some of the barriers. And I've been seeing great process with our partners to be able to, just get people who didn't think they qualified or were scared to qualify to get into these programs. And it really does change people's lives when you see someone come in. They have a bill of $900. They don't believe they qualify for a discount program, or they're living in very harsh conditions. Since last year, we just went through this kind of like long winter. I felt like it lasted forever. But some of these community members were really living in some harsh conditions and needed help. And I've been that point of contact for them, and taking them step by step through the process and getting some of the weatherization done. I mean, it really is going to change people's lives. And you could really see that in the faces of the community members. So right now, as of March, the Clean Heat and Weatherization Program, we're just starting the recruitment and the application process. So we've had our first weatherization approval. So I'm happy for that. And then we have 6 more scheduled. So this is kind of what we've been doing now. And I want to talk about some of the next steps in the future. So as I'll be doing outreach and community targeted recruitment. And it's just basically pretty simple, and we can do some follow-up questions if you guys have any more questions after this. But in this year, in 2024, we're just doing the Beacon Hill community outreach to reach some of the harder to reach low-income folks on Beacon Hill. And some of the exciting plans that we'll be doing is radio advertising across the county. The Cinco de Mayo event, which is a large participation event, I'll be there. I'll be running around. If you see me, please go to that event. You'll see me running around. You definitely interact with me. And then we're going to be doing a data-driven campaign using El Centro's pretty vast data. We have over 10,000 contacts just living on Beacon Hill that I'll be going through to make sure that they are being serviced and they know of the weatherization program. We'll see an up spike on our recruitment for weatherization and clean heat. And I went through that pretty quick, so we'll definitely have time for some questions. Once again, there's my number. If you guys know if you know anyone, or if you guys want to contact me after the meeting, there's also a QR code for my LinkedIn. Yeah, UDP is a utility discount program for electric.
How does that rebate work?
added some, documentary splits. And then I called the city about the rebate, and I was told you had to go through your contractor and they had to go through that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so there is, so if you're, it sounds like you're kind of like, mid-income. So they have a list of contractors that are approved by the city. And you have to go through one of those contractors that are approved by the city in order to get a rebate.
It's been nice to make clear before.
Yeah. I think some of the language and it is one of the issues I've been trying to solve is some of the language on the website hasn't been necessarily as clear and
Okay.
mhm, mhm,
Because I'm thinking rebate, you purchase something and then just trying to get a rebate.
right.
And it sounds to me like it's the other way around.
Okay.
You apply for the rebate before you.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah, that's definitely yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always love getting the feedback and kind of taking that. So if you want to get in contact with me, I'll definitely write what you experienced and make sure we could resolve that in the future for anyone else. Right. I'm not quite sure. I can't quite speak on that. That's City of Seattle. Right. I wouldn't quite be able to speak on that. That's how City of Seattle chooses those contractors. I don't have involvement with that, unfortunately.
Any questions from the Zoom? We're just going back and forth. Any questions from the Zoom? So Jerry, no more? We have one more question back here. I saw there. Was it Burger Hill or August?
One of the, we have so many species on the ground. That's one of the expensive for them to recover. For example, especially, some of them have 40, 50 years in the night contaminated soil. So what do we do about those people who have them?
Yeah, so you're mentioning the oil pans that have oil has spilled into the dirt and the dirt is now contaminated. Is that right? Is that correct? Well, I mean, that's definitely, I think one thing is identifying those areas that do need that help and then see how those areas can be remediated. That would have to go through a City of Seattle program. I'm not quite sure if that program exists, but that would be a question for Christine.
I didn't want to cover, Ivan. So for low-income folks, there is a City of Seattle program we're in. It's the clean energy conversion and the decommissioning of tanks. On the average, it's anywhere from 13,000 to 18,000 because it has to be a complete cycle. So the important thing here is Christine Bunch had put her phone number, her email. So please get the word out. Beacon Hill Council is part of the Beacon Hill Clean Energy and Climate Resiliency Task Force with El Centro and Bethany United Church of Christ. And we had a study done by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and there's 900 households in Beacon Hill who are between 30 and 60% AMI or 200% below poverty level. They're eligible for those programs. And also Ivan, he's really a critical link for those of you who are middle income to get weatherization services. So please, sign up with him, okay? Because all of us have to do what we can to be able to help reduce carbon pollution and greenhouse gases so that we can manage the temperature of the earth. I mean, all of us need to have a hand in it.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Thank you, Maria.
Chat about someone asking about dirt contamination where there's oil spills.
Okay, the dirt contamination where there's oil spill, if it's from the tank that they have for oil heating, oil home heating, if they are low income, there's a program that they can go through the city to get assistance to convert and get that. It used to be that the tank would get dug up and put away, but now if it could be cleaned and they fill the tank with pebbles or stones so that it's slightly lesser bill. So that's the pivot. If they're low income folks, there's more programs that are available. If they're medium income, it's more energy assistance in terms of weatherization. And in the state law, there's some electrical upgrades that are available. So again, let's put in the chat Christine Bunch's email, so that at least there's a point of contact and request. And again, Ivan is available for the weatherization outreach.
Yeah, and if you guys have any question like on that, the weatherization program, you know, it's a healthy homes program essentially. You know, as we use that I think HomeWise was the language that was used by City of Seattle. Some of the feedback was it was a healthy home. You know, what is that? You know, it's free from mold, free from, you know, air pollutants like from that burning oil to an electric system. And you know, just those quality of life upgrades, just like how Christine Bunch had mentioned that heat pump does have AC, you know, for some of those people who are higher risk, having an AC, a working AC in the summer and heating in the winter is really critical for people high at risk.
I'm curious, how many folks in the room, raise your hand if you've been thinking about converting your oil and gas system to electric? Couple, 3, 4. Yeah, Ivan's gonna be here until after the meeting for about half an hour, so
Yep.
hit him up, at least get those contacts. All right, last question, any last questions on this topic? Ali?
So, and
That anybody asking the question, if they use the microphone, it makes the Zoom people hear. Come on up, Ali.
And my name is Ali. Today I'm here as interpreter, but I'm in WAMA, Washington African Media Association. So one of the slides is outreach. You said you communicated for the radio. In 2024, nobody listens to the radio unless you're driving freeway to listen for the traffic. Why you are not reaching for the ethnic media? Which the city of Seattle, we know more than 50 different ethnic media, with a 50 different language in city of Seattle. Why you're not connected with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. As far as the radio, that is one thing that is used still within the Latino community. So that radio is used, is still pretty popular within our community. There we do social media and engage through social media and through our website in multiple languages. Yep. Right.
Christine, I hope you can hear us. We're thanking you as well as Ivan. So a big part of our resiliency is trees, right? Trees produce oxygen. It helps us along. And I want to share with you guys tonight again another partnership between our North Beacon Hill activist Andrew Abian and also our partner with Seattle Parks Acquisition, which is Jeffrey Bishop. So come on up and have a seat there. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, can you hear me okay? Everyone? Is there a switch?
There's no.
Hello? That one worked. Okay, well. Hi, sorry, this works a bit too well. My name is Andrew Abia. I've been a resident of North Beacon Hill for about 25 years this spring. And I have 2 sons there. And I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of huge changes right on my block and the whole neighborhood. A lot of them for the better. We've definitely got a lot more density. And generally, that's been a good thing. We've been happy to see more neighbors and better use of this great urban environment and a lot of the amenities that have come along with it to make, it a truly a neighborhood that serves more and more people. Okay. One of the challenges we've had, though, is that there's not actually a lot of accessible green space, and there's a lot of topographical issues. Obviously, we're on a hillside. And especially in our neighborhood where we're at, we're right there on the hill, and it's really difficult to reach the closest open parks and green space. And so raising my kids, it was very nice. Luckily we did have a cul-de-sac that we could play catch in, but when there weren't too many cars parked there. However, if we did want to go and enjoy any sort of green space, we typically had to get in the car, and Jefferson Park hadn't been created yet, so we had to either go to West Seattle or to Seward Park or to other neighborhoods of Seattle. Luckily, we now have Jefferson Park, but that's not necessarily accessible to a lot of people, especially not by foot. So we've been working hard. There is in our area, and so to give you an idea, actually, if you can go to the next slide, it might show. I've got more than one slide. There we go. Okay, and I do apologize. These are sort of old slides, and I didn't have a lot of time to get into it to include them. So I'll just point out. I know people throw slides up, and it's like you understand what's happening here, right? And of course, it takes me about 10 minutes to really just decipher any of these things. So I'll just point out some landmarks. What we have here is I think this is North College Street up here. And this is, let's see, Beacon Avenue is along here. This is 17th Avenue, 15th Avenue, 14th Avenue south. Okay, does everybody kind of have an idea? Spokane Street is down, it's out of view. Yeah, so this is North Beacon Hill. Let's see, and I do apologize. This is actually a map that was prepared by Parks as part of their gap study. So the region, if you look at this, okay, so it comes down to this block right there. This is the last undeveloped block on North Beacon Hill. There's one house on it. There's some outbuildings as well, but the rest of it's basically divided into 10 lots, and most of those lots have not been built on, and it's a challenging environment. There's some flat space, but it's also on a steep hillside. And in fact, about 20 years ago, there was a mudslide onto 18th Avenue South. I raised my kids right around here. There's been lots and lots and lots of development happening. A lot of infill, a lot of townhomes, et cetera, happening. And that's, like I said, we've been supportive of that. It makes a lot of sense. Right on my block, which is just actually very close to this block, we've had 2 of the lots get converted into I guess townhomes. So we went from having, I think, 6 houses on the block to now having 17 separate residences on the block. So it's happening, and we haven't been fighting them. What we do need, though, is some green space, and this area has been identified as Parks as being in a gap in terms of accessible parks. And what you don't see in this map, you see kind of like how the crow flies. Most of us don't fly like crows, and so we do end up having to walk. And if you want to get to the closest park, it's actually up here at Beacon Playfield, and it involves going up about 200 feet vertical.
And if you want to go the most direct route, it's still going to be a 15-20 minute walk going up, depending on where you are, 1 or 2 flights of steps. So, I can't imagine many people doing that with, say, toddlers or, if they're mobility impaired or anything like that. In order to avoid the steps, basically, we've got a wall here, 2 sets of steps there. In order to avoid the steps, you would have to go around to College, which is still a fairly steep road, and then work your way over here, and then also hit some very steep roads up there. So otherwise, you might see some green there, but this is Rainier. So that's another wall. That green up there is like the basically I-90. So there's some grass there, but it's really not a usable space. Okay. So the block, I do apologize. Some of these slides are a little tricky to see. The block was owned by a single family for a long time. Actually, can you go to the next slide? I think it's the history is right there. Okay. The block in question was owned by a single family for decades. And they built some outbuildings on it, and they lived there, and they raised their kids there. And it was when I was living there was a retired couple. They had some dogs that they would let run around in the fenced-in area. Talking to them, they sounded like they would be interested in talking to parks about eventually it reverting to parks. Well, in 2010, so it's going back a few years. 2010, there was a parks funding proposal in terms of, or there was a bond measure for parks to acquire more land to devote towards parks. And they had a citywide call for proposals. We went ahead and submitted a proposal for acquiring this block. It scored very, very high because of the parks identified this as being an area where, that could really benefit from more parks and green space, accessible parks and green space. It scored very, very high. Parks interested in the proposal was top 10 in the Opportunity Fund proposal citywide. However, the existing owner was never properly consulted with parks. And once they actually found out about parks' interest in it, they shut it down. They did not want to talk to parks at all. Fast forward 10, 12 years, the owner, my neighbor, he passed away. And his wife, his widow, she decided to move, and the family decided to sell the block. And they went ahead and did sell it to a developer. I don't know if city, well, that was before Jeffrey was with Parks. And we weren't aware of anything like that. I don't know if Parks had any idea about this happening or, but they didn't have a chance to purchase it. So it got purchased by a developer. They were going to develop it and put 44 more units on it. Okay. Once again, we're not anti-development. It's happening, and by and large, it's a good thing. But in order to have a great city and a livable city and a city where people are not dependent on cars, we need parks and green space. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so I already talked to you about this, kind of set you up for that. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, yeah, here's a map. This is the block in question. So you can see there's a lot of trees there. There's a beautiful, actually, deodar cedar, which I guess is not a native species, but there's a lot of native species and fir. There's madrones on there, various other trees. I'm not a tree expert myself, but there's definitely Doug fir and other trees. I think maybe some cedar as well. And of course, a lot of big leaf maple. This is the block. It's on a steep slope. There's steps here, steps there, etc. And you can see these are the structures that are built on it. And this is where there was a mudslide about 20 years ago. Okay. This area, this is outdated because as I mentioned, 11 units have gone on these two lots right there. Okay. Right over here, there's 6 units. If you go a few blocks away, so this has all been rezoned residential small lot. So a lot of infill happening. Okay. If you go just a few blocks north, which is downhill and even more challenged in terms of accessing green space and park space. There's been so much more development. Every block has, scores of, maybe not scores, but many townhomes, et cetera. So we really are keyed on getting this preserved for the good of this growing community and for future generations. Can you hit the next slide? Okay, so yeah, this is the block. Once again, there's 10. The city recognizes 10 lots. They were also to the developer. In 2023, I guess, is the actual acquisition just last year for about 4.5 million for those 10 lots. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Anyway, so there was proposals to do these developments. I think I mentioned 44 units. It was actually split into 2 separate development proposals, same developer, one on the east side of the block, one on the west side of the block. And the signs went up and the community saw the signs and the community put in a lot of comments about it. I want to stress the community is not anti-development, but this community is very pro-parks and deprived of parks as well, and thinking about future generations. So if we looked at the comments, if you did an analysis of the comments, basically the vast majority of the comments were supporting preserving the green space. Let's see, the numbers aren't on here, but we're talking over 100 comments were submitted between the 2 different. Some of these are duplicates because these are actually these are technically 2 different developments. So a lot of people put the same comments on both of them. But you can see the vast majority are supporting preserving green space or supporting the park. Okay.
Who's the developer?
It's called Storybuilt, or at least that's who it was originally. So to add intrigue, they're currently in receivership. So apparently we've got to wrap it up. Okay. So yeah, there's just a breakdown. So you can see there's a lot of community support for parks to acquire this and to, save this for future generations. Decades from now, hundreds of years from now, nobody will regret the fact that there's a park and green space available to the community there. Nobody regrets the parks that we have. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. Anyway, so that's pretty much what we're talking. So luckily, we were in touch with Parks, and Parks still recognizes the value of acquiring that land for open green space for the good of the community. And so they've been, I guess, in talks with the developer, and they're trying to make this happen. I'll let you speak.
Good evening. I'm Jeffrey Bishop. I'm the property manager for Seattle Parks and Recreation. One of our responsibilities is the acquisition of new parks for the community. And as you can imagine, our funding is a little bit limited given the economic realities of our budget. And as a result of that, we do a lot of what we refer to as finding positive leverage for our acquisitions. And that will often involve pursuing some type of a grant funding for an acquisition. And in this particular case, we have made a grant request to King County's Conservation Futures Program to get all the money that's necessary to support the offer that we just recently made. One of the requirements of that grant is public support. We have received a letter of support from the community council from both Mount Baker and from Beacon Hill. But at present, CFT has had a lot of requests for funding, and they're asking for more grassroots support. So if you know of any group that's involved with citizens or members of the community that are interested in preserving any of the open space that we have in the community for the future, we would recommend that you write some type of a letter or a note that we can send along to King County. Our first presentation to King County is on April the 27th. It would be ideal if we could have it before April the 17th. And if you need someone to coordinate that, you can contact Maria. She has all of our contact information and can get that information to us, and we would appreciate that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I could talk for days on trees and preserving open space, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in particular about our efforts, our program, and our funding sources.
So one of the things that Jeffrey has encouraged is if you know of land that still has trees and you think they need to be preserved, to email him where that land is. So for example, in Beacon Hill, we have the Noji Gardens area, which is, anyway, but so that's an area. And then I know Middle Beacon Hill, there have been 6 lots that have been forwarded to me. So I forwarded to Jeffrey. So they're very interested in helping our communities. There's also other ways you can help themselves, like the Department of Transportation has trees that you can plant on the sidewalk and so forth. But this is really important. Part of it is we are up on a hill on this side. So we have very, less trees than other parts of Seattle. So that's a problem. Eric?
So if this developer is in receivership and we're trying to get a grant, from the county, how would that work? Would they use the power of eminent domain?
The domain is prohibited for acquisitions from conservation futures. So it's one of the tools we do not have available to us. So it's all by negotiation. So it has to have a willing seller and of course the city would be willing to buy at fair market value. Now, if your perception of fair market value is $100 million and ours is $3 million, then we're probably not going to come to a deal. But if it's within reason and we can spend time and pursue some negotiations, we can acquire it for fair market value. It would be up to the property owner. Yes.
Shy, but they've been working that property for 14 years. They have about 4 neighbors.
So we in Beacon Hill Council, what we can do is lift up the issue. But really, it's that local, what is going on in your community? What do you want? And Beacon Hill Council can help lift it up. So along with that, there is a new program, Trees for Climate Resiliency, that is coming on board. And Lauren Ergensen is actually maybe 3 months now as as a strategic advisor for trees in the Office of Sustainability and Environment. Please welcome her. She's rolling out new programs.
Okay, I'll stand. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you, Maria and Beacon Hill Council, for the opportunity to come and connect with you today and talk about 2 upcoming tree equity initiatives that we're rolling out this year. Next slide, please. Maria already mentioned, and I think many of you are aware of the benefits that trees provide for community health and well-being and climate resilience. Next slide, please. Yeah, yes, I can. Thank you. Yes, can they hear me now? Is this better? Okay, thank you. No problem. There you go. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. And one benefit of trees that we're increasingly focused on are the health benefits from extreme heat. And so these graphics I'm going to go through them quickly. So a few years ago in 2021, the city did a canopy assessment and they looked at heat and they looked at canopy cover. And so that picture on the left is from a King County heat study. And you can see in each of those circles, it shows heat. And so the more yellow the circle, the cooler the heat. And then as you get into that deeper color of red, the hotter it is. And you can see we have some really clear urban heat islands in Seattle. And the picture on the right is from that same study. And so in those same circles where we looked at heat, we also looked at canopy cover. And there was this direct relationship in that the more trees you have in that circle, the cooler it is in that circle. And so trees have this really important role in our heat mitigation strategy at the city. Next slide, please. And so, we also have a vision for urban forestry. So Maria mentioned, I just started my role. I'm the urban forestry senior advisor in the Office of Sustainability and Environment. And we have a vision and a goal for urban forestry. So our vision is a Seattle where everyone, starting with those most harmed by inequities, have access to trees and the benefits they provide, and where we keep our trees and forests healthy and thriving in the face of a changing climate. And we have a specific goal, and that goal is to achieve 30% canopy cover by 2037. Next slide, please. And so we also know from that same study that tree canopy is not equitable in Seattle. And so we have racial and social equity priority neighborhoods. And so if you look at that picture on the left, the neighborhoods that are popped out and have that darker line around them, those are the neighborhoods that are overburdened by racial, social, economic, and environmental inequity. And the colors are tree canopy. And so the more yellow colors are less tree canopy. And as you get towards the deeper green, that's more tree canopy. And neighborhoods that are racial and social equity priority neighborhoods have less tree cover. And over the course of this period, which was 2016 to 2021, they lost more tree cover. So this is really important information that we have around urban forestry and to set up our strategies. Next slide, please. And this issue of tree equity is not just an issue in Seattle. Inequitable distribution of trees in city is a problem nationwide, and it's a problem statewide. And so also Seattle became one of the first cities to join the first statewide tree equity collaborative in our country. And it's a 3-year partnership. And so we're also working with cities around the state and with many partners to understand the issue of tree inequity and to figure out how to address it and address it well. Next slide, please. And I'm here today to talk about 2 new tree equity initiatives, but equity has been in part of Seattle's urban forestry work for a long time. And so there's focused planting and maintenance in equity priority neighborhoods, and that was codified in the mayor's 2023 One Seattle Tree Plan. There's community-led forest stewardship through the Green Seattle Partnership, led by community. And then the Trees for Neighborhood program will often work with community to prioritize equity priority neighborhoods for tree giveaways, supplies, and tree care support. Maria mentioned that program as well. Next, please. So I'm here, though, to talk about 2 exciting new opportunities for trees. And that's work that we're launching this year. And it's a new citywide canopy equity and resilience plan. And then also we're doing a Reaching Urban Tree Equity Initiative, which is a federally funded grant initiative, a 5-year initiative focused on Beacon Hill and Chinatown International District. So I'll tell you a little bit more about each one of those. Next slide, please. And so first, the citywide canopy equity and resilience plan. And so this is a body of work that the city identified that came directly out of that canopy assessment I talked about. We realized that there's something that we need to do differently in order to reach our canopy equity goals. So that's the purpose of this plan, is to provide a framework to reach that vision and reach those goals. And so we're bringing in the best available urban forestry data that we have. We're doing assessments of our current policies and programs. We're going to bring that information to community and come up with some strategies and solutions to increase tree canopy in the neighborhoods that need it most. Next slide, please. And this is just the parts of the tree citywide canopy equity and resilience plan. We're going to locate equity priority neighborhoods. We're going to identify plantable space. So all the spaces where you can put trees currently and understand what to do to get trees in those spaces and understand the opportunities and the barriers to increase tree canopy. We're going to recommend strategies and actions to grow plantable space in low canopy neighborhoods. And then we're going to create a framework to guide further community engagement and bring the plan to action. Next slide, please. So the other thing I wanted to introduce to y'all is this new initiative. It's the Reaching Urban Tree Equity Initiative. And the city was really honored to receive a large grant, a large federal grant this last year. You might have seen it in the news. It's $12.9 million grant. It's the historic investment in urban forestry through the USDA Forest Service. And it's focused on expanding tree canopy and access to green space in cities. Next slide, please. And so we're calling it the Root Initiative. Root, but it sounds like tree root. Yeah. And so it's again, 12 million of that $12.9 million over 5 years. And it's focused on federally designated climate and economic justice neighborhoods. And so that's Beacon Hill and Chinatown International District. And it's focused on forming new partnerships. So some of the partners are my office, so Office of Sustainability and Environment, Parks and Rec, Green Seattle Partnership, and Youth Green Corps, and a number of community-based organizations, including Mountains to Sound, Greenway Trust, and ECOS, Rising Star Elementary, Seattle Public Schools, Seattle Housing Authority through Rainier Vista, and then it's really about community leadership. So hopefully, yeah. Next slide, please. And so there's 3 main parts of the Root Initiative. And so one is to support 4 cohorts of the Seattle Parks and Rec Youth Green Corps, which is this really great, it's an excellent program focused on, youth green jobs pathways for youth. And it involves training and job experience and a number of wraparound services. So that's one part of this work. Next, please. Another part is community-led forest planning and action focused on Chinatown International District and Beacon Hill. And so, this funding is going to lift up community and voices, form neighborhood leadership teams around urban forestry in these neighborhoods to develop action agendas and to drive community tree planting and tree care in these neighborhoods. And then the last part is cross-property forest stewardship. And so many of you might be familiar with the Green Seattle Partnership, and they have this really great community-led forest care and stewardship program on parks lands. And so this grant is going to take that model and expand it off parks lands and specifically onto Seattle Housing Authority and Seattle Public Schools properties, specifically Rainier Vista and Rising Star Elementary. And that's all. That's what I wanted to come and introduce you today. We'll be starting this work later this year. I hope we get to work with all of you. Thank you. Happy to take any questions. Yes.
I just want to mention that there are a couple of Green Seattle Partnership sites on Beacon Hill. Cheesy Green Space is one.
Yes.
And the East Orange Green Space, Chicago Street is another. If you want to hear about those, you can come and talk to me about the East Orange Green Space. It's also a great way to get kids out in nature, and it's wonderful if kids need service hours for school to come out. We have work parties once a month and we have a good time.
Fantastic. Any other any other thoughts or questions? Yes.
Ask if people can talk to the microphone.
Oh, for your questions.
Well, I'm hoping that this initiative can address the lack of trees along the Chief South Trail in particular.
Yeah, so part of the idea about being community-led is that the community decides the priorities and we work together to figure out how to get it done. And so I can't answer that, but I think, through these, we'll hear what the priorities are. Yeah. Yes, hi, yes.
So I just wanted, so I'm sorry,
Oh, you're supposed to come up and ask.
Sorry. And I hope I'm not cutting. Yeah. No, so I was just kind of curious. So the grant funding proposal that you were talking about, can that be worked? Can that can Seattle Parks use that towards acquiring existing green space? No. Mhm.
Use it to prioritize green space and.
Oh, absolutely.
Where to put funding and efforts moving forward in order to reach our canopy goals. But that funding is already spoken for to reach those three, reach those three goals. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say more about how you're going to engage community?
Yeah, sure. And so it's a great question. And so there's the way that it's, and we're hiring. So if anybody's interested in working on this, I'll be hiring 3 new people to lead a community engagement coordinator, an initiative lead, and somebody to handle all the federal grants pieces, which are quite complicated. And so that will be developing over time. And again, we're just launching this initiative, but what we're imagining is that there will be 2 root teams, and those will be leaders whose time will be compensated, and it will help drive the whole strategy. And so that's kind of, we'll take it from there. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Maria?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You just got
We're still working on it. We have some ideas. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
So we have some announcements. Betty Jean from Beacon Arts. And then I think we need to close the meeting, have a little party, go eat, and just enjoy each other, okay? And one of the big thank yous, Mark brokered this space for free, and Philippia is the community builder for New Holly. And she was the one who helped us get this facility. Thank you so much, Philippia.
Hi, my name's Betty Jean Williamson, and I volunteer with the all-volunteer Arts Council for the Beacon Hill neighborhood called Beacon Arts. And if you look at Red Apple and other businesses around the neighborhood, you'll find our new spring brochure, which talks about all the great free neighborhood events between now and June. And there's copies of it on the table over there. I also want to highlight that this month on the 16th of April, there will be another seed share event at the Jefferson Community Center. So if you want to grow food and you don't have the ability to buy seeds, or if you are a gardener already and you bought your seed packets and you have extra lettuce seed, you can bring them there and share them with your neighbors and have a little nosh and talk about gardening. So that's at 6 o'clock on April 16th at Jefferson Community Center. We're also planning the return of the street fairs on the 2nd Saturday, May through September on the Festival Street. We are also expanding that onto the Light Rail Plaza and the Roberto Maestas Plaza and Centilla starting in June. So that's where we're going to kick off a new community dance program. So everybody needs to put on their dancing shoes and show up in June. And we're also preparing for the summer concerts in Jefferson Park the last 2 weeks in July, first 2 weeks in August. There'll be free concerts in the Jefferson Park Amphitheater on Thursday evenings, and we encourage you all to come. And if anybody wants to help with any of that, go to our website and drop us an email, and we will be happy to have another pair of hands. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to be short and quick so everyone can move on to gathering and eating. Thank you so much to our tech team for the improv work. Thank you to our interpreters for supporting everyone tonight. And thank you to our Zoom audience for working with the audio piece. We appreciate the feedback that we've gotten. And if anyone wants to share just really quickly at your table or shout out here a wish that you have for Earth Day this year, that we can use that to close ourselves out. I wish, Lauren, that your program is so super successful for Beacon Hill. That would be awesome. Any other wishes? throw them out there?
I'm hoping for more rain across the, like, this is around across the country. And the Colombian River is, sorry, the Colorado River really needs water, so.
Yeah.
A lot of converse, water, much of that.
All right. Well, you can continue to share them with each other. Feel welcome to gather and chat. We'll probably start gently cleaning up around you. And there's more snacks. Thank you, everyone.